Alright, today we're going to be changing out spark plugs. So I've gone ahead and bought these NGK TR6s. For my specific application, I'm going to be gapping these pretty tight. They're going to be gapped at 0.28. The plugs that I'm going to be using are the NGK TR6s, part number 4177, and these are the non-iridium ones. And there's a few decisions that you make when you're buying these plugs. I'm typically the kind of guy who would buy the most expensive, best thing for my car, but in this case these plugs work very well, and these are the less expensive ones. They're the non-iridiums, and there's also a few different opinions about the iridiums, that they may not run quite as smoothly. So these ones seem to be an all-around okay kind. I see a lot of people running them without any problems, and since they're cheaper, you can change them out more frequently and you're not spending $10 a plug or whatever they are. I know they're a lot more expensive than these. On the 32 valve engine, the spark plugs are located underneath this little plate here. There are two 8mm bolts that are holding the coil cover in place. This one in the back, you may have to move the clutch cable just to get to it, but just put your 8mm socket on there and remove those. Once you remove the coil cover out of the way, you'll have the coil on plugs that will now be exposed. There's 4 per side, and then the spark plugs are right below those. There's a little tab right here where my thumb is that you'll be pushing down and then sliding this connector off. Okay, so you just slide that connector off, then you're left with the actual ignition coil, and it just pops right out. And so there's the spark plug down in there, and it's pretty darn clean, but we're going to use some compressed air while the spark plug is still inside. Doing my little dance here so I don't touch the car. Anyway, just stick it down in there and blow out any debris that may be down hiding in there. Well, I just wanted to show you with my compressed air here. Something I did was get a straw and I put it on the end here, and I was able to blow out each of those spark plug holes. I did it with the spark plug still in the car, and then another thing I did that you might want to think about is I just took a good old shop vac. I had the smaller hose for it here, and I just put it directly over the spark plug hole as well, and sucked out every bit of debris that was in there. There wasn't much, but it's just something you can do just to get any debris out of there. Man, it is coming down. I'm also going to take a rag and just kind of clean up my spark plug wrench. This is a 5/8, and it has the rubber piece down in there. And that piece can get a little bit dirty, the rubber part, because we're going to be putting some dielectric grease on the plugs. But just make sure that everything's clean, especially when you're installing. Now you can take one of the new plugs if you want, and just make sure that the wrench is the correct size for it. Everything looks good here. So now with my 5/8 inch socket here, I'm going to go down into the cylinder head and pull that spark plug out. Remember that this goes in at an angle. Okay, so don't be trying to go straight with it. Obviously you can't, but it also, remember when you're tightening and loosening these, remember that you're at an angle. Okay, so don't be putting force on it and an incorrect way. So just very carefully go down in, move it around until it locks onto that spark plug, and turn it to the left. Okay, so very gently break them loose. I'm using a breaker bar, but being very careful to make sure that I'm perfectly straight on the extension, and just shouldn't take too much force, but it's sometimes better to use a breaker bar just so you have more of a steady turn on it instead of trying to use a smaller hand wrench. Okay, now that it's been broken loose, I'm just very carefully ratcheting it out, and when I can, I'm going to just pretty much take off the wrench here and do it by hand. And remember, we're dealing with very soft aluminum on the cylinder head threads. Now the 03 Mach 1 and Cobra Mustangs had the 4-thread cylinder heads, and by 04 most of them had been revised to be a 9-thread. My 03 Mach 1 over there has the 4 threads, and I've never really had a problem with them, but the main thing you want to be careful with is that they're always torqued down, because with less threads it's more likely for them to come loose. So here's the spark plug here, and I'm going to be checking the gap and the condition on it. I'm going to be gapping my plugs to 0.028. So what I did is I have my 0.030 measure and my 0.028 here, and I have just a hard surface, which is this slab of granite. And so here's my plug, brand new. And so what I've been doing, they say you can tap them, but I don't really want to do that. So what I've been doing, let's see if I can get a good picture of it here for you, is I've been putting it on this hard surface like this, and when I see it, I can actually have the red backdrop as a, behind the plug to see it a little bit better. But I'll just kind of put it right here on its on the little tip, and I'll just apply downward pressure until I just barely see it move. Okay, I mean, it doesn't take too much to get this thing to bend. It takes some force, but I mean, if you go too hard on it, it'll just collapse all the way. So I'll just be very careful about that. And let me show you what the finished one looks like here. So here it is. You can tell it's been bent just a little bit. And if you take the 0.30 feeler and put it in here, it just doesn't quite fit. But then you take the 0.028, okay, and it slides right in. Okay, so that's how I know that I'm within my my limit. Okay, so I have two products that I'm going to be applying to the new spark plug. One is going to be some anti-seize that will go on these threads so you don't mess up your nice cylinder heads. And the other is going to be this bulb grease, or dielectric grease, which I'll apply to the back here where the coil on plug attaches. With the anti-seize, you want to use it very sparingly. Just put a little bit of a dab here on the bottom of the threads, and then as you screw it in, it will spread them throughout the rest. Okay. Remember, if you have too much grease on here, you can change when you're going to torque it. It could mess that accuracy up and some other things like that. So just put a little dab here on the top, and then a little bit of a dab of the grease on the back. So here you can see I added the anti-seize on the threads here, and that might even be a little on the generous side. Probably didn't even need quite that much. And then the grease here on the bulb for the back side. Okay, so I've checked my gap again to make sure that this plug is perfectly ready to go. And I'm very gently going to put it down into the cylinder head, and by hand very carefully turn it and get it to go into the threads. Okay, you should be able to turn it pretty easily and get it started. Never put it in with a wrench in the beginning. You want to make sure you're not cross-threading these heads. Okay, so I very carefully lowered this down into the cylinder head. I was watching the whole area down there to make sure that this was centered. And as soon as it made contact with the bottom, I gently turned it and did it pretty much all the way by hand. Now that I'm here and it's hand tight, okay, that's where we're going to torque it. And we want to be very careful because it doesn't take too much force to torque these. So once you get it hand tight, stop there and get out your torque wrench. Okay, so here's our torque wrench, and this is measured in foot-pounds. Today we're going to be torquing pretty much to the 15 to 17 foot-pounds range. Something to be aware of on these torque wrenches is that 15 foot-pounds isn't very much. So on this gauge you'll see that it even starts off at 20. Okay, and 20, as if you see where the horizontal line is here, okay, that's not where you crank it up to get 20. This line drops down, and that's at the bottom of it. That's where 20 foot-pounds is. And so what we're going to be doing is going to 17. Now, something else to know about these, since 20 foot-pounds isn't even that much, 15 on this gauge doesn't even show up. And on top of that, this torque wrench starts at 10 foot-pounds. And you wouldn't know that until you crank it to 20 and realize that you haven't gone around twice. So these smaller numbers down here are your single digits. And then, so for example, if we're going to be going to 17 foot-pounds, we're already starting at 10, and we just know that because that's where this wrench starts. So if we wanted to go to 17, we'll turn it to 7 more clicks. This would be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, so we know that we're at 17 because we're still below that 20 line. Let me show you if we were to go to 20. Okay, now we're right at the bottom of that line, so we know that's 20 foot-pounds. If you're confused, you can take it up another 10. And so now you can see that that would not be 20. We're covering 20, now we're at the bottom of the 30 mark. Okay, so remember that the measurement is not this line, but it's where it drops down to the center. Okay, so if you're confused, you can always go up one number higher and then count down. So we know that this is 20, so we're going to go 19, 18, 17. That's going to be our 17 foot-pounds mark right there. Okay, there's a lot of controversy over the torque specs. Other people are saying 15 or so because of the kind of plug and all that. So I set mine to 14, 15 right there, and there's some good force on it, and I have the 9-thread heads, so it's probably less likely that it's going to walk out anyway. Now's a good time to inspect the ignition coil. One of the main areas you want to look at is the boot down here. It has a little spring, and that's what's going on the back side of the spark plug. But you want to look for tears in here because that'll cause it to arc and not work correctly. And that's, from what I've heard, a lot of the main problems. If your coil has gone bad, it might be worth it to try just replacing the rubber boot part. It's a lot less expensive than the entire coil. I've seen these start to go about 75,000 miles or so is when they seem to start giving out. On a supercharged car like this, it might be a little bit earlier. I actually went ahead and bought some new Ford coils that I'll be installing today. I'm at 40,000 miles, and I figured it would be a good idea.